Hi viewers and welcome to the channel and welcome to the series for the Lattice2 workbench where we're unlocking the secrets of the Lattice2 workbench for FreeCAD and how to use them in your models. We're on episode 3. In the previous episode we looked at wrapping text around objects. In this episode we're going to be looking at a more complete model that has multiple placement arrays to create such things as knurling or textures on that model. We're going to be looking at linear, circular and projected arrays for such things as B splines. We're going to be learning how to create these arrays and attach them together in one single array called a join array. We're then going to create arrays of these join arrays to rotate around the object and place the needed texture across your model. So I hope you're enjoying the channel. I hope you're enjoying this little mini series. There's quite a few on my channel. Let's have a look at this technique. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a coffee site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. For this tutorial, I'll be working in the Sketcher. Also, we'll be working in the Lattice2 workbench. If you haven't got this installed, then come up to Tools, Add-on Manager, and we can install it from there. In my previous videos, I showed how to install it and the basic concepts of the Lattice2 workbench. So we're going to build a simple lamp. And we're going to add some texturing or some knurling around that lamp to get an idea how we can use Lattice2 with multiple arrays. So creating a sketch along the XZ plane. What I'm going to do is create a simple sketch, but I'm only going to use straight lines and arcs. So when we come in, you'll see this center and endpoint arc will be available. We're going to be going into the B Spline in this tutorial and showing how we can use that as well. But we're going to first start with the basics. So I'm going to use the polyline and create a line and a line going out. So we've got the shaft and the base. Let's hit escape. I'm now going to use the arc to add the base. We're not worried about the size of this. This is for the demonstration. So I need to change the height of this to about 300 millimeters. I just want to get my base height and length in, and length for this is going to be about 250 millimeters. That gives me something to work with. And we've got this arc, and I can decide where that arc's going to go. So I can change the radius, I can change where this is going to sit and where it's going to arc over to. Place another arc. I've got the auto constraints on. So if we look down, we've got the auto constraints, the avoid redundant constraints. That means when I hover over here, I can create a coincident constraint just by clicking on that point. And we'll add some detail with another arc. And place another arc at the top. And I'm just going to connect this point and this point with a straight line, like so. Hit close. Now we've got this sketch. I'm going to come over to the part workbench. Just going to press the front. Just bring this onto screen. Let's use our center view. There we go. And we're going to create a revolve or part revolve. It's asking me for an axis to revolve this around. So the Z axis has been selected. You can see one in there. Z is pointing straight up, so it will rotate around the Z. So let's hit OK. That's what we want. And we've created a basic lamp stand in there. Hole will be drilled through the middle and our shaft of the lamp will be added to that. What I want to do is add some kind of texturing around this. And I want to do it to the whole lot. I could just do it to the base here or to this here. But I want to add it to all parts of this. So somehow I've got to get placement around here and up the shaft. Let's come over to the Lattice2 and center our object on screen. Click the front. Let's zoom in now a bit. When we create the rotate, first thing we need to do is make sure the sketch is hidden. So press the spacebar on the sketch to make sure that's hidden and grayed out, because we want to utilize this seam. So you can see the seam that runs around here. What this allows me to do is add a corresponding placement along the seam. So for arcs, we would use the polar, and for lines, we would use the linear. So clicking on this seam here, this arc, and clicking on the new polar array or Lattice2 polar array, and we just use the span/n because we can change that at a later time in our properties. You can see that follows that arc along there. If we look down, we can see the span end. We can't actually change this. So if I change this and click off and come back on, you see the span end hasn't changed because it's been constrained by that arc. So no matter what we do to the span end, it won't change. We can change the count, the amount of items that are along there, the amount of placements, and we can change that. Hit Control R or click off and that will change. Let's do the same to this arc here as well. So this one will be the polar array as well. You can see that's added. We've got the count of 7, so it's tried to fit 7 in there, which is done successfully, but we may want to reduce that down to about, say, 3. You can see those 3 are in there. We have an offset as well. If we come down, we can see that we've got this offset. If I change this offset, this will change whereabouts this will start. So let's increase the count and then decrease and increase the offset. I'm just going to click on the revolve and press the space bar and show you what's happening with that offset. So this is the polar array, and if we change the offset, we can see how this is moving. So we've got control of where it starts and ends just by using the offset and the count. Also remember, we can use the generation here, so we can step in and decide where that's going to sit. So on a count of 4, and we can change the step. Let's bring back the revolve. So now I want to select this line here. Now this will be a linear array, so linear arrays are for lines. So we can come up to Lattice2 linear array and select it from here, or use the toolbar here. Use the drop down, select linear array, or select the linear array from there. And we've got the linear array added there. Again, we've got an offset. So if this gets added and it's somewhere up here, then we can adjust the offset. And we can move that in Control R up and down. Now I may want to add this curve here. I'm just going to leave that one. So we've got those there. Matter of fact, let's add this one and add a polar array to that one. Number of elements 7. I want to change the count, not the number of elements, and change that to 3. So now we've got these arrays added, these placement arrays. I want to attach something to these placement arrays, and in the end bring this around, repeat it all the way around this pattern. Well, how do I do that? Well, we get into the joining of the arrays. So we've got all the arrays here. We need to join these together. We're going to use Lattice Join tool, so join arrays. So we're concatenating together 2 or more arrays. It's also available on Lattice2 join arrays. All we need to do is highlight 2 or more arrays. So I'm going to click on the first array, and I'm just going to shift click on the last array. So I've selected all of them. We can click, hold down Control, and select the different ones if we so desire. But I'm just going to select them all. And then I'm just going to use this tool to join the arrays, or Lattice2 join array. What will happen is those arrays will be joined together with one join array. This means that I can come over to the part workbench and create something in here, either by using a sketch and extruding it, or using one of these items along here. Let's just use a simple sphere. Sphere has been added, but we can't see where the sphere has been added, so I'm going to click on the revolve and press the spacebar. The sphere has been added at the center point. Let's change the size of that sphere to something like, let's stick it at 6mm for the time being, and we'll change this afterwards. I'm not going to move this, because if we move it, we're going to cause some issues, because we haven't actually added a placement to that. If we added a placement over in the lattice workbench, then we can move that to wherever we want. So we added the Lattice2 and clicked on that and add a placement, or Lattice2, attach placement, then we can actually add this and join this up to this array that's going around here. But we're not going to do that. So I'm just going to hit cancel. I'm not going to use a placement as of yet. Click the join array first, control click the sphere. We haven't moved this sphere, we've just left it where it is. Come out to Lattice2, populate with copies, not populate with children, populate with copies, because it's not an array, it's a single object. So remembering from the other video, arrays are square brackets. Anything in square brackets are arrays. You can see that, so the blue cube is not in square brackets, and this is the one we want. Click populate with copies. We keep the original, but it's been copied all into place along here. So click on the original and press the spacebar. We can change the original size or the dimensions or even the shape at a later date. Let's bring back the revolve and you can see what's happened. So a sphere has been placed at each of these points along here. I'm just going to click on the placement and press the spacebar so we can see how that's been placed. So it's been placed all the way along here. So we've got one instance of the collection of spheres that runs around here. It's been created with the populate join with sphere. What do we need to do to create multiple instances that run around the whole object, as well as creating collection of objects that run along an array? We can also create an array that runs along an array. So this pattern, this join array, we can actually duplicate up in a polar array. So I'm going to delete the original populate join sphere and just leave that sphere there. Just hide it for the time being. We're going to be using the join, and also we're going to be using a polar array. Now to use the polar array, I'm going to select this circle and create a polar array around there. And now I'm going to click the join array, control click the polar array, come up to the populate with copies, but populate copies build array. And that builds an array around that circle, which we can populate with our items. So let's just show that. So we've got the join array. We click on the edge that we want to place the polar array around. Click on the polar array, Lattice2, polar array span /n if you want to use the menu. Places that around there. We now click the join array, the one that we want to duplicate up. Control click the polar array, the one we want to duplicate around, the one we want to actually use as the guide. Lattice2, populate copies build array. And that places that array around there. We can then use the sphere, show that sphere, and remember the sphere is sitting in the middle. It hasn't got a placement on, so we mustn't actually move that sphere. It's going to be in the point of origin. Control click the new polar array and then come up to the populate with copies or Lattice2, populate with copies. And that places that sphere around there. Let's come in with the populate with copies and just hide those. We can change that underlining polar array and increase the count, say to 10. And we can also come over to the part and click on our new object. Make a union in several shapes. So we've got the fusion, and then we can use the fusion against the revolve, either joining it or removing it from there. So now we've got our fusion and the revolve. We can take these two, file, export. Now we can import it back in. And we have our lamp as an STL format. So let's have a look how we would introduce the B spline into this. I'm going to come into the revolve and double click the sketch. And I'm going to replace this arc here. Delete that out. I'm going to use the B spline. So come up to the top and select the B spline tool. Auto constrain to this point, and we're going to create some kind of curve between this point and this point. Hit escape to get the mouse pointer back, and again, and I'm just going to move this into place, something like this. So we've got our B spline in here. How do I get a placement across this B spline? Because when I close this, you can see our revolve has changed. We're going to still be using this edge. I've deleted all the rest, so we're back to a revolve and just a sketch. What I'm going to do is come into the Lattice2 workbench. And again, I'm going to work my way through the edges, adding those arrays on there. So this one is going to be the polar. This one is going to be the linear. This one again is going to be the polar. And now we come to this one. So now we've got our three arrays. What do we do with this edge? Well, we have to look at the edge and see that the closest match to this is a linear array. So place down a linear array. This will be placed on the bottom, so we need to transform this into position. So right click, transform, and we can move this into position. And rotate this. If the rotation increment is at say 15, then we just reduce this down to 1. And we can rotate this into position. What we need to do is place it as close to this line as possible. Now there is some problems here. You may enter a few problems with attachment with this, and we're going to try to recreate those problems so you can actually fix those. The first thing we need to do is make sure this is long enough. So if I click on this revolve, we can see this is jutting out too far. So it's overly long for that edge. To change that, we click on the linear array, we come down and have a look at the span end. So span end, if we reduce this down and hit Control I, you can see how that's reducing down in size, and we can match this up to the length of that edge. I'm just going to go a bit further. And I'm also going to right click and transform this forward a bit. So it's starting on that edge. Now, just going to put this below, so it starts below. So I can recreate an error. I hit OK. So that's sitting below there. Hopefully we'll be able to recreate this error now. So the linear array is sitting here. We select it, Control select the edge. We're going to use this icon, the project array, also available from Lattice2. Project array. We get an error message up, which is fine. Hit continue. And you'll notice that the linear array has disappeared. So coming to the project array, we need to come down, and we're looking at the orientation mode. It's long U at the moment. So place this tangent to plane and click off. You see we've got another error. That's because it's sitting underneath this. What we need to do, come into the project array and click on the linear array. Press the space bar to actually show it. Right click, transform, and bring this above, like so. Hit OK. Now if I hit Control R, you can see it's already taken effect. So we've got the linear array here, which is inside. If I press the space bar, you can see how that array has been transformed and molded to that edge. What I can do is have additional control over this linear array. So if I bring this up, hit Control R and rotate it, you can see it has an effect on the actual model. So I've got finer adjustments in here so you can see it all taking effect. I'm just going to Control Z that. And remember that if we don't want this kite here, then we can change the amount by finding the linear array and looking at the number of elements. So we're looking for the count. Change this to 4. But you see we have a few problems here. We've got 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th. Bring back the linear array. Let's transform this as a case of transforming, hitting Control R to actually bring these into position and getting the best fit that you want. So you can see this one is pointing upwards and these ones are along here. We can change the rotation, bring this down a bit more. See, it's gone into error, so just bring it up. You can see the first one is the one that's causing some issues there. Let's bring this forward and we can mold this into position. There we go. So that is more or less how I want that array to lay along that edge. Hit OK. So now we've got a projected array and 3 arrays. And the same applies. We control click all of them and then join the arrays, or Lattice2. Join array. And that's created one single array all along here. We can see we've still got this linear array showing. So if I drill in, projected, that linear array is still showing. Just press the spacebar. And you can see if I press the spacebar on the revolve, how those are going to be placed. We've got total control over these arrays again. If you come into the polar array, which is this top one, pressing the spacebar, look at the count, and we can change the count to that one. And I've got this one here. Maybe I only want it 3. And we can change also the offsets. So we'll look for the offset. Now we can change these offsets, so 0.1 to move those about. So total control over these to allow us to place objects along here and build up our array in the shape that we want. There are other placements, so if we can come into here, we can see we've got single placements, XZ along Y. And we've got this custom one, which means it will place a single placement. You can see it there, but we can move this around. So we can build up arrays as well. So if we have a very awkward object that we want to place placements around, we can actually transform these and place them into position and build up our array. So I can hit OK. Once I hit OK, I can right click, transform, and move this to a position. Hit OK, and then I can Control C and Control V that, transform, and place this one somewhere, say over here. OK, just pasting it again, and we can build up our custom placement of where we want these. Hit OK, and again we take all of these and create a join of that array, and we can place whatever we want along these placements. So that's a quick introduction to the join array and also the project array. We're going to be using this later on because I'm going to show you how we can actually project arrays across different shapes. But this is enough to get you started on your custom placements, adding custom knurling or custom texturing to your objects. Look out for another Lattice2 workbench coming up quite soon. Also, there's the Understanding FreeCAD series. I'll be dropping ad hoc videos in as I go along. So quite a lot happening on the channel, and I hope to see you soon. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a Ko-fi site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. Thanks a lot for watching and subscribing, and I'll see you again soon.